These fields are the same way. They work whether you want them to or not. The question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to let them happen by default so that you're giving in to what's going on out there in the world and buy this and do that and say this and join this group, because that's the trendy thing to do? Or are you going to decide, no, I'm going to take command of my energy field and I'm going to decide what I want to do with the energy field, because people could do anything they want.
Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. It is such an honor to have Dr. Jeffrey Fannin here with us today. Dr. Fannin is known globally for his work on brain mapping, including research on cognitive neuroscience, focusing on brain function and changing subconscious beliefs that hold people back. He holds a Ph.D. in psychology, as well as an MBA and a Bachelor of Science degree in mass communications, and has worked in the neuroscience field, mapping and analyzing the brain for over 25 years. He's been involved in cutting-edge research, including using electroencephalogram, EEG technology, to accurately measure balanced brainwave energy, and has created effective brain mapping and brain training programs. Engaging this process forms symmetrical brainwave pattern in both hemispheres of the brain and creates harmony from front to back, thus giving the person greater access to more mental and emotional resources. And we're going to learn more about that today. Dr. Fannin was part of a research team at Arizona State University, researching neuroscience and leadership, including work at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. His recent research interest is on the effect of subtle energy in the quantum field and consciousness affecting the brain. He does workshops and speaks at international events. And in addition to all of that, Dr. Fannin is also a certified heart math trainer. And for those of you who are familiar with our podcast, you've heard me talk about heart math many times. We've had Dr. Roland McCready, the head of research at Heart Math, on the show. And this means really that Dr. Fannin, you have an expertise in both how the head and the heart work and how they work together to amplify the quantum energy field. And I'm so honored, like I said, to have you on the show today, because there's so much going on in our world, so much change, and people know that they need to make changes in their own lives, in their teams, in their organizations, but they really don't know how, and they need to better understand how to manage their own energy so that they can create sustainable behavioral change more easily and effortlessly. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate that. And all of the things that you're talking about, I mean, you are absolutely right. We are just moving now in what I call going from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. Now, what does that mean exactly? The third dimension, we have a lot of distractions in the marketing and buy this and do that, or you're going to miss out, or whatever it is. And a lot of people will buy into that because that is their life. The fourth dimension is more about awareness. It's more about love. It's more about appreciation. So there really is going to be the two different camps here. Those who want to stay in the third dimension and those who are ready to do the work to get into the fourth dimension. And there are more people than you can imagine that are already in the fourth dimension and looking for ways to practice some of this. And so that's kind of where we're at today with some of this stuff that you and I have talked about in putting in this podcast. So I appreciate being here.
Oh, such a joy. I am myself, I'm curious to learn more about the research behind many of the practices that we learn about. And I want to start with the quantum energy field. What is that exactly?
And there's a lot of misconceptions about the quantum energy field. The quantum energy field, because when we look at what as we know in physics as quanta is a particle, it's an energy. And so the quantum field is the field that we have around us. So we're talking about, we know what a field is. So when you take like a magnet and put it on a plate and sprinkle some iron filings around it, you can actually see the field that it's actually creating. So these fields, whether we're talking about a bone, a thought, an emotion, or some kind of physical element, we have these fields and we call them quantum fields that we are dealing with. So the question really becomes, what do we want to do with the energy? By way of example, I talk about this one a lot, and I'll talk a little bit more later about it. But when we amass the energy, and you might remember that from Karate Kid, you know, and so you can amass the energy, but you can feel that energy. Then the question becomes, what do you want to do with the energy, and things like that. So let me give you kind of a really quick example in the martial arts world. For a fellow that owns a dojo, he and I were talking, dojo as a martial arts studio. And so they had just finished their session, and people were standing around talking on the sidewalk outside. And one of the women in the group, she had a purse over her shoulder. And a guy runs past, he grabs her purse, and just as the dojo master steps outside to talk to everybody else, so he saw what was happening. He knew what he needed to do. So he amassed the energy, and then he threw the energy at the guy running down the sidewalk with the purse. It hit him in the back, upended him. He fell down, and they were able to retrieve the purse. Now, that's just one of the energy fields. The bigger question is, what do you want to do with the energy field? And so that's what we end up talking about in some of the things that we're going to discuss today. We see this at different times, different places, different things. Let me give you one more real quick example here. There was a guy by the name of Max Freedom Long, who was an international journalist, and he was visiting the Hawaiian Islands. And so this event was actually reported all over the world in newspapers and things like that. And so here was this guy. They were going to have a luau or a barbecue on the beach. He drives up to the edge of the sand, and he steps out, and he steps in the sand. Let's just say this guy had maybe a little more to drink than he should have had. And so he twisted his ankle, and you could hear the bone snap. And so he ended up with a compound fracture. Now, a compound fracture is where the bone is actually sticking out of the skin. So all the people around were going, call an ambulance, call an ambulance, call an ambulance. And so this woman who practices Huna in the Hawaiian Islands, and we see this in almost every culture, she says, now hold on, wait a second here, let me work on this. And so she got to the front of the line. She started working on this guy with the energy. And then she looked the guy straight in the eye and she said, you can stand up now, you're fine. And he kind of stared back at her bewildered. And so then he starts to stand up and he realizes he's actually fine. And then there is no evidence that his leg was broken or that the bone had been poking out of the skin. But we see that in all cultures. In India, we call it prana. In the Hawaiian Islands, we call it huna. So there are many, many different examples. The question really is not that the energy exists or the field exists. The issue is, what are you going to do with the energy? And that is the key here. And I think that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. What do you do with the energy? Because everybody has the ability. They just don't know how to use it.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for these examples. Now, some people listening might be thinking, really, Dr. Fannin, that seems too amazing to be true. I personally believe, because I am also trained in Huna. I'm done the third level of Huna.
You know how that works.
I know how that works. And I also know that really the important thing is to start with suspending disbelief in these things, just to be curious. And so I invite everybody who's listening to our conversation today to remain in a curious place. So they don't need to believe anything per se, just to stay open and to allow whatever is meant to arise. And huna, another word for huna is ho'umana. That's the original word. And that is to make energy, which is exactly what we're going to be speaking about today. Because when we're able to bring more of that energy, we're able to shift some of the old patterns, programs even more easily, and to create change, again, much more quickly and in a sustainable way because it's deeper. So tell us a little bit more of the science of this. So what is this field and how can we use it?
Yeah. Let me go back to some research that I was doing. back, I think it was about 2019. And there's a group that deals with vibravision. And so they had contacted me to come in and do some research and stuff because they wanted to know, how did these people who put adhesive bandages over their eyes and put a blindfold on top of that can drive a go-kart where you can drop colored beanbags in their hand and they can tell you what color the beanbags are, even if they don't have any eyeballs? How did they do that? So I started measuring people and looking at that because we thought it was in the brain map. It actually is not in the brain map. It's actually in the quantum field. So when you look at the field itself, fields will talk to each other. So whether it's a cellular field, whether it's a magnetic field, whatever kind of field it is, that's what fields do. They talk to each other. And so one of the things that we found is that as I was looking at the brain maps of these individuals, going, how did they do that? You know, and realized in one of my meditations, it was saying, you're looking in the wrong place. And I was looking at their brain map, and it's not occurring in the brain map. It's occurring in the field. And so we understand a little bit more about what's called morphic resonance. And the morphic field, the morphogenetic field, is that area 3 feet around us, pretty much in all directions. And we build this thing called a torus. And so the energy comes up through our chakras and out the top of our head, and then comes around about 3 feet in all directions. So when my field gets near your field, our fields are talking. The question is not what they're talking. The fact is, what are they talking about? You know, and so this is where the energy. So when we look at things like negative thoughts or negative beliefs, and I appreciate the fact that you told people to kind of stay open a little bit here, because we are going out on the outer edge of where some of this stuff is, so that you can begin to not only suspend the belief, but begin to understand the science behind it, because there's a lot of science here. So when we began to look at the vibravision people, how is it that you can drop a colored beanbag in from your hand down into their palm of their hand, and they can tell you what color that is before it hits the palm of their hand and be very accurate? How do they do that? Well, it's morphic resonance. What is what Rupert Sheldrake told us about. So we have the field, the morphic field. And then the question is, how do you use the energy in the field? And that is the morphic resonance. So these people, even if they don't have eyeballs, they can feel the resonance of the color, you know. And so some of these people I had worked with, to watch them do what they do on a daily basis, even with this one guy, he had lost his eyeballs to a disease, and his wife had lost her eyesight to diabetes, but they could do incredible things. And so as I looked at that and realized it's not up here in the brain so much, the brain is processing the information, but what's really happening is the energy field. So the question is, what do we do with our field? And so most people can deal with this. They've just never been taught, one, that it exists, and two, that they can do something about it.
And so, for a person who's listening to this, that may or may not be, well versed in energy fields just yet, why should they care?
I think that's an excellent question. Why should anybody care? Well, it's kind of like gravity. Now, you may not understand gravity. You may not even be able to explain it. You may not even care about it. You may not even like it, but you can climb to the top of the highest building around you and jump off and say, I don't believe in gravity, all the way down. Gravity will work whether you want it to or not, whether you believe in it or not. And these fields are the same way. They work whether you want them to or not. The question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to let them happen by default so that you're giving in to what's going on out there in the world and buy this and do that and say this and join this group, because that's the trendy thing to do? Or are you going to decide, no, I'm going to take command of my energy field, and I'm going to decide what I want to do with the energy field, because people could do anything they want. If you want to drive a go-kart with bandages over your eyes, great. If you want to create any kind of thing. So this is very much like, and I use this thing, this conscious versus subconscious mind here. And Bruce Lipton talks a lot about conscious versus subconscious. So we have the thinking part of our brain right up here. And so the thinking part of our brain only processes about 5% of everything that we think, say, and do. Whereas 95% of everything that we think, say, and do is processed by our subconscious. Now, let me put that in perspective here a little bit for you. So the thinking part of our brain, the desiring part, it can only process about 40 bits per second, whereas the subconscious mind can process 40 million bits per second. So the conscious mind can't ever hope to keep up with that. So here's an example. So the thinking part of your brain says, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. And so it runs down to the subconscious, says, what is our rule about money? Now, how the rule got there or where it came from does not matter. Even if it's not true, it does not matter. But that's what brains will do. If it doesn't have an answer for the situation, it will make stuff up. And then it convinces us that we should believe that. The heart doesn't do that. If you're asking your heart, is this the right thing to do? Is this intuitive? It's going to basically say, yep, that's it. It's not going to try and convince you, oh, well, you need to think about this, you need to do that, and look at what other people are doing. That's not the way it works. So basically, what we are putting out in the field, the universal field, is whatever we are thinking about, whatever we're feeling. So if my brain is saying, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money, it thinks that's what we're broadcasting out into the field. I want more money so that we can attract more money to us. But basically, when that energy is out of phase, meaning that the energy is going in opposite directions, we are literally pushing away the very thing that we're trying to attract. So our subconscious belief is basically saying the belief about money, your belief, where it came from, is that you don't deserve more money. So we're trying to attract, I want more money, I want more money, but we are pushing that away because the energy, the field we're putting out there says, you don't deserve more money. So we can't figure out why it doesn't work. And people say, well, you have to align your energy. Well, okay, that's true. How do you do that? and that's about getting the energy in alignment. That is about getting it in coherence. And so that you're putting out the right message, the message that you want. What do you want to do with the energy? Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm so grateful that you explained it in that way, because people sometimes wonder, well, I was very clear about what I wanted, right? I'm crystal clear. Why can't I, do this thing, right? Like, let's say lose weight or get this relationship. And then they experience these recurring patterns and they blame themselves. They say, I'm not good enough. I just can't do this. When the reality is that it's energy. They're just not conscious of what their unconscious or subconscious mind is radiating out into the field that then ultimately they attract back to them. So as I say the words, right, attract back to them, many people might be going to The Secret, right, the law of attraction.
Right.
What exactly is that, and what does that have to do with this?
Yeah, I understand the question that you're asking. I'll do my best to answer that here. So basically, when we are putting energy out there, we are looking for the energy to be coherent. Now, what does that mean? That means when we have the energy and the apex of the energy, basically, when we are putting that out there, so we have the vibration. And we know that if we hold that vibration for 16 to 17 seconds, other energy that is like that will be attracted to it. Now, when that energy comes together, it is amassing the energy. So if each one of these had the number one, this is just an example, the number one and the number one, when they come together, then they become in phase. And now they have the energy of two or three or four. So they are amassing the energy so that that energy is being put out there, they are matching the energy with what their desire is. Most people don't know how to put that together because they have too many rocks in their backpack, or they have too many beliefs that they are carrying around, and so there are two parts to this. There's the energy part, and then I write about this in my fourth book, and we talk about things that come from generational issues, and we all have about a half a dozen different a family of origin beliefs, and we will sabotage ourselves. We will do things, and we don't know that we're doing it because we learn that information when we're about 7 to 9 years old. And so as we get older, we get into our 30s, 40s, 50s, and even older, like I am, then basically that we are getting that field. I want to feel worthy. I want to belong. I want to feel loved. I want to feel safe. And so these are vibrations that are there, and we are putting those out there, whether we believe in it or not. So it can be generational. Some of us may have picked some of this energy up, these patterns from generations ago, but they are still ringing through the energy field in our cells, in our thoughts, in all of these things, because we are not managing those thoughts. We are not managing what that pattern is. So we relive this pattern, and we have some people that I write about in that book, and it talks about, how they sabotage a relationship, or they sabotage themselves, or whatever it is, and they don't realize that they're doing. So I talk a lot about how do you fix that? And so there's a way that anybody anywhere can do that, and to fix those old patterns with a 4-step process and understanding. You go through those 4 steps, and you can do it on your own without anybody doing anything to guide you, to direct you. You don't need a therapist to do it. You can just do this on your own. So
Well, I imagine most people listening, if not all, are like, okay, tell me what those 4 steps are. And to clarify, these are 4 steps that allow us to radiate a more coherent intention out into the field so that
yeah, that would be part of it. So the 4 steps, first of all, you got to name it. What is it? I want to feel worthy. I want to feel like I belong. I want to feel safe. So we're going to identify what that is. The next thing, we have to grieve over that. And so if I'm recalling a memory, when did that first occur in my life? And I go back and I think, oh, I remember when I was a child and this would happen. And so we are then viewing that as we would like with a child. So then the question becomes, as an adult, what do I want to do with that child? If that child is me, do I want to pick them up, put them on my knee and say, it's going to be okay? Do I want to give them a hug? So I want to provide that coherent energy to that individual of saying, yeah, it's going to be okay. And then we can go back and we can do that again, because every time we do it, these 4 steps that come about, then we will pick up some new nuance that maybe we didn't see before, maybe we didn't understand. And so it's like peeling an onion. 1 layer at a time, we're getting rid of these old patterns that maybe are generational in what they're doing. But people can do this. I like to curl up in a blanket and sit on like a cushion or in a chair. It doesn't matter if you're laying down with your eyes open, your eyes closed. You can do that anywhere. But it's just, one, understanding what those steps are, and then being able to activate those and grieve over it, and then just do it again. So you might do it once every day for a week, and then not deal with it for 5 years. And then you're going to come back to that and do it again and again and again. Once you know what those 4 steps are, you don't need somebody to do it for you. You don't need a therapist to guide you. I mean, you can. Some people like to do that, but it's not necessary.
Thank you, Dr. Fannin. Would you be willing to guide us through this so that if people listening may, if they're safe, may be able to close their eyes and, really be guided by you through these 4 steps? Is that something that you're willing to do with us
Oh,
today?
sure, sure. I'd be glad to
Thank
do
you.
that.
Thank you.
So let me sit up in my chair here, not slouch down. Um, so pick a quiet, safe place. Make sure that you're in a quiet, safe place, that it's not too noisy, and that you feel comfortable. You can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed, laying down or sitting up, whatever is the most comfortable for you. And some people will actually use their heart as part of that process, and they will rest their hand over their heart. You'll see this in a lot of different cultures where people will maybe hold their hands in a posture, a prayer posture, or put it over their heart so that they are having access to that coherent energy. So once you're in that field, and whether you're doing it eyes open or eyes closed, and now you have named the very thing that you want to change, you're going to get a memory of that. Where did it first start? You weren't born that way. And so there had to be an occasion where that occurred. So you're going to get a memory of that. And with that memory, then you're going to bring that into focus, whether you're looking at it as yourself as a young child or as an older child or in a relationship or having a difficult time, whatever it is, you're going to look at that memory and then you're, as you name it, well, I wanted to feel more worthy. I wanted to feel like I belonged. I wanted to feel safe. Once you have named it, then you're going to give it a voice. And that means that you're going to grieve over that. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I may be speaking only to myself. I'm so sorry that that happened to you, but everything will be okay. You have the ability to work with this, to deal with this yourself, and hold that in your heart and then remember it whenever you feel like remembering it. And so again, it's like peeling those layers of the onion back one layer at a time. And so you can go to this place whenever you like, whenever you want, and begin to work with that. So once you've identified it, once you have grieved with it and said, okay, now I want to fix it. How do you fix it? And that is doing it again, because this is how the brain learns. It learns by repetition, doing it over and over and over again. So you can visit this as many times as you want. You can do it in a safe, quiet place as many times as you want. You might do it once every day for a week and then not visit again for 5 years. But you have the ability anywhere, anytime. So pick the place, pick the event, and then be able to work with that and heal yourself in that process. Those are the steps that you want to go through.
Thank you so much for guiding us through that. And what actually happens in the brain as people do this? Take us through what happens in the brain, maybe also in the body and the field.
Okay, so basically, in the top center of our head, we have this thing called the corpus callosum. We have a left hemisphere, we have a right hemisphere, and that's how a lot of these patterns are formed and how our beliefs are formed and that sort of thing. So, give you another example here that when we are trying to change a subconscious belief, we heal the most and we learn the best in theta. So when we go to sleep and we are in that sleep cycle and we are in theta. So what is theta? 4 to 8 hertz is the frequency. Now, if on the left-hand side, we're looking at a subconscious belief and we have 18 hertz there. And so we are listening to something with 18 hertz. And then we have 10 hertz in the other side, on the right side of the corpus callosum. And so then what actually happens in the brain? it brings those two together. But what does the brain hear? It subtracts the 10 hertz from the 18 hertz. And now it's in 8 hertz, which is the top of the theta band. And so now we're in the learning and the healing state where we can actually do something about it. And so that's what's happening in the brain if we allow it. But if we are allowing that thought based on, and this is what I learned about with advanced meditators. One, most people don't know how to meditate. And two, most people don't know how to quiet their mind. And so all of this beta activity is going on and, do this and do that. And, they're thinking about all this stuff. Well, I should be washing my car and I should be buying the groceries. Oh, yeah, what am I going to buy? So they start doing all of that stuff. And then they just realize, well, maybe I don't know how to meditate. Well, that's why we go through a process called mindfulness, where you can do mindfulness while you're washing the dishes, while you're walking the dog, while you're getting your groceries, whatever you're doing, you can be in a state of mindfulness in order to do that. But you can't get into that state if you get too many rocks in your backpack. So that's where it starts, with those 4 steps and being able to do that, and then be able to decide what you want to do with the energy, what you want to attract, and then get that in that theta state. The whatever you're listening to, the 18 hertz would be the activity, or the beta activity that's going on in your brain, and then the subconscious belief, the 10 hertz over here. And so you want to put that in the theta state. You want to get in the theta state, and that's how you do it. You get in the theta state. And there's lots of different ways. Everybody has a theta state. Most people do not know how to get into the theta state. Most people don't even know what the theta state is. But now you know what the theta state is. So that's going to be your best learning state, your best healing state. And so this is a question of, how do you get into that? What do I do about it? How do I get rid of these old patterns that are not working for me? So if you want to know what's on your belief window, look at your behavior, because your behavior is driven by that. So I keep doing this again and again and again. Well, that's what's on your belief window. So this is how you change something. And there's another way that we can do to change the belief window. And we can talk more about that a little bit later.
Thank you, Dr. Fannin. So you've given us a process for how to go inward, to be able to set an intention for, let's say, a belief or something that's out of harmony in our life, or what it is that we want to change, and then to connect with maybe an earlier time in our life when we may have experienced that, and then to go in through the heart and give love and compassion to that part of us, to help them grieve, which is a big part of change. I mean, I know many people know about the change curve, right? And, for us to be able, where we kind of dip emotionally as soon as there's a change, and we may go to anger and so on. And then we hit, kind of the depression side of the change. And before we can go up and build some more upward momentum, we need to accept the change. And I imagine that grieving part of the process is about that, to accept what is no longer there, and to soothe, right? To help soften some of the sadness and so on.
Yeah. There is a quicker way. I mean, you can do that, and that's one way to get rid of generational family of origin patterns. But there is a quicker way, and it's called attitude breathing. This comes from HeartMath. So when you look at attitude breathing, and so maybe you're in those doldrums, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling down, whatever it is. And so you identify what that pattern is. I'm feeling down. And then you choose the pattern or the attitude you want to feel. And then you begin to feel that in your heart and in your breathing, and feel that, well, I want to feel more exuberant. I want to feel more coherent. I want to feel happier. You decide what it is. It's not for me to tell you what you should have on your belief window. It's for you to decide what that is. And so once you decide, then you can begin to feel that, because of these neurites around the heart. and they are going to feed that energy and bring it into coherent balance so that you can then feel more exuberant, so you can feel more excited, so you can feel more connected, so you can be your authentic self. This is all about becoming and living your life as your authentic self. There's a lot of different techniques and ways to do this.
Thank you, Dr. Fannin. So again, just to kind of help our listeners by just kind of mirroring what I believe, what I heard you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that first we need to become conscious of what it is that we want to change. What is the pattern? Let's say the belief. It might be I'm not good enough, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time, I don't know how to do it, I'm not worthy, whatever it might be. And then to label how we feel, yes, how that makes us feel as we focus on that thought. And then essentially to activate the heart through attitude breathing. So to say, if I'm feeling like this, how do I want to feel instead? And to breathe that in and out of the heart, imagining the breath flowing in and out of the heart. And what that does is it creates a coherence, right? Whereas before we were incoherent, then it creates a coherence, which is that whole brain state that you talked about. And I imagine that once we do that, we're able to kind of yield, to let go of some of the over attachments, the polarization, the more extreme unconscious beliefs and patterns, and create access to get intuitive guidance.
Right. Well, and a lot of people try to get intuition. I was actually in a movie a while back. It's called PGS, Your Personal Guidance System, Intuition. So I was the neuroscientist explaining what intuition actually is. So, I mean, you are absolutely right in all of that. And let's talk about this vagus nerve here. So around the heart, we have the neurites and that sort of thing. And there are two different parts to it. There's a sympathetic nervous system, and there is the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system ramps things up. This is where we get anxious, overwhelmed, feeling doubtful, whatever it is. And we need the parasympathetic to bring that down so that we have this balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. When that is out of balance and the sympathetic is taking over, that's when that we start to have all of these thoughts and the negative thoughts. And, so there is this process of, if that's happening, what do you do about it? And so we kind of have been through that process a little bit. Some people, can do this very well on their own, and other people may need a little bit of help or guidance or a coach or somebody to help them through this. And that's one of the reasons why I created my online course, using a lot of heart math techniques and things like that, and heart math videos and so forth, so that people can literally log on to there and pick the lesson that they want to learn and go back and review it as much as they want. They can learn as much as they want, or they come back and say, oh, I don't remember how to do that one. Do I do that? And so then they can review and, oh, yeah, now I remember. And then they can go through and they can do that, because we don't eat an elephant all in one bite. So this is about taking bite-sized chunks and then learning with it, using it, applying it in our life, and then deciding what we want to do with it. So we're identifying what it is. We are deciding what it is we want to do with that, how we want to be different, and then having a technique or a procedure or a strategy for actually dealing with that in the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And what happens in that quantum energy field when they deal with that in the moment, when they go inward, label how they feel, how they want to feel, do that attitude breathing or another technique to get coherent, right? To get that synchronization.
We're going back to the autonomic nervous system and bringing that into balance. So if they're feeling overwhelmed and they're up here and the sympathetic nervous system has ramped that up, we need the parasympathetic to give us a more coherent energy and to bring that down so that it feels better. This is done by military, law enforcement, you name it. It's out there in the world. caregivers in the hospital, nurses, teachers, bringing it into the classroom and working with some people in being able to deal with this in the classroom and that sort of thing. So I have a project that I have going right now dealing with indigenous tribes on the Apache Indian Reservation. So these are young people, youth and young adults who are dealing with tribal norms or individual things, and they're struggling with this sort of thing of how do I deal with this? And so we have a group of people, and we call them success coaches. And so we are training the success coaches because they're the ones working with the youth and the young adults on how to do this. We have teachers that we are working with to bring this into the classroom. So when they have a student in the classroom who is having a particularly tough day, or they're not doing a test well, or they're having test anxiety, whatever it is, they can take a couple of minutes and bring that coherence of energy to the student, to the individual, or get rid of generational things that are going on with that person in all of this in just really a matter of minutes. Now, how do we do that? Does it require special training, special energy? No, we all have a field. The question is, what do we want to do with the energy in that field? So if you're a teacher, you're a CEO, or just an individual, a mom, a housewife, maybe your kids are being really unruly. Can you stop for them for just a moment and say, how about if we do this? How about if you think about it this way? And change their perception, change their ability to deal with that in the moment. They'll do it because it's very simple and we all have the ability. We just have never been taught how to use it.
Yeah. And to connect it to the beginning of our conversation again, when they do that, so when they pause, they label how they feel and how they want to feel, they get coherent, synchronize their, sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of their autonomic nervous system, and they create that, different signal going up the vagal nerve to their head. They're in a more of a whole brain state. Their perception changes. They access intuitive guidance. What actually happens in the field around them as they do this inner work?
I love that question. I really do. Because a lot of people don't think that far ahead. So in the field, if your field is coherent, the torus around you, and I'll give you a couple of examples here. So if we walk into a room full of people and whatever our field is, if it's negative, we are going to be attracted to the one person that will be worst for us. And we will think, oh, they're just like me. No kidding. They're just like you. The problem is you're a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So you're attracted to that individual. Now, the other side of that is if you have a coherent energy and you are living from that coherent energy, and as part of your daily practice of what you do in order to start your day off, the things that you read, the things that you want to attract into your life, now you're beginning to put that energy into the field. And the field is saying, oh, I know what you want. Let me go get it. I'll get it for you. It's on its way. It's coming, that sort of thing. So it really gets back to the field. What are you going to do with the energy in your field? One, identify where it's at right now. And if you don't like it, change it. Nobody is going to force you to change it. And you have the ability, we have the innate ability within ourselves of how to do that. So you don't have to have a special gift. You don't have to have an IQ of 160 or 190 in order to make this work. It's like gravity. It's just there. Question is, what do you want to do with the energy?
Yeah. And one more follow-up question on that for my own curiosity, if you're willing. As we're radiating a more coherent signal into this field, I understand how it impacts other people's nervous systems and how we can kind of resonate more with some individuals that may not be really healthy for us, if you will, for example. What actually happens when you measure the energy in the field? what are we actually seeing is different in the field? And how is it? What are the mechanics, the science behind attracting, let's say, a relationship or a job or a business opportunity?
Okay, yeah, good example. Let's go back to where if you have a vibration and you're putting that out there, whether it's a positive or a negative vibration, doesn't matter. But after 16, 17 seconds, energy like that is going to be coming to it. So now the field that you have is vibrating at that energy. Could be positive, could be negative, but it's up to your desire of what you want to have happen. So when that energy comes together, and you're beginning to amass that energy, how much energy are you putting out there in the field for attracting people who are like you, who are like-minded, who feel the way you do, who want to be around you, who want to be on your team, who want to be part of that? And so these are the people who then become part of that because you are like-minded. You are attracting that energy, that focus, that concentration, because you're finding like-minded people and you're one of them and they're one of you. And so it just feels good. That torus around us in our field talking to their field, I mean, that is the science of it. What is your field talking about and who are you talking to, with all of this?
And how does that contribute to like global coherence, global consciousness?
Yeah, that's a great question. The global consciousness, so we've talked about it on an individual level, we've talked about it on a group level, and when we talk about it on a global scale, we are all connected. So if I'm connected to you, you're connected to me, we're connected with everybody. And with that connection, the question becomes, what do we do with the field? Are we in coherence with some of these other people, or are we living our life on default? Based on whatever is in our face, whatever is coming down the pike, whatever is the new trendy thing to do, or are we living it not on by default, but we are living our life with purpose? And so that's really the key to that. And so we can live in harmony with other people in the global field and we can partake of their energy because that's what happens. The energy field in the global field is out here, it's vibrating. And if we are over here and we are holding that, we are vibrating to the same energy that is happening in the global field. And I can tell you, I do that on a regular basis. And it feels good. That the intuition, we just know it's right. Intuition comes to us. People show up. And if you read any of my books, you'll see where people just show up in my life. I mean, that happens to me almost on a weekly basis. People will show up. I don't know where they come from, but they find me. They read about me in a book. They show up. And I was telling somebody the other day about, that back in 2010, we did a show on Gaia TV called You Are Not Your Brain. And I still get calls from that show back in 2010 from people who how did they find me? Or they will go to one of Dr. Joe's events and then they will find me. How did they find me? Why did they care after 5, 10, 15, 20? Some people haven't, we have never connected at all, but they will find me. Why did they take the time to do that? Because the energy in the field and the intuition that they're having just says, yeah, find him, call him. The field is bringing them to me because I'm matched to the field. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Thank you so much, Dr. Fannin, for all the amazing insights and the research that you've presented here. As we leave the conversation, what is the most important thing that you believe people need to know, and especially people that are decision makers in our world, leaders, change makers, so to speak? What do they really need to know about the truth of the field and their own power?
Well, I love that question because It really gets back to what we were talking about originally. It gets back to the field. So we not only have the field that is around us, but what is our field? What is my field as a leader, as an influencer, as a person, as a human being? What is my field? And so if I'm content with my field, I will know that. If I'm not content with my field, I will know that as well. And so if I'm not content, then we've covered some of the steps. So this is about bringing your field into proper alignment, bring it into balance. And when you do that, you will have better wellness. You'll have better ability to attract intuition. You will have better ways of relating to other people and changing your perceptions from what they were to what they need to be. And a lot of people need to know that in this day and age.
So thank you so much, Dr. Fannin. How can people learn even more about your programs, whether it's the online course, your workshops, the incredible books that you write? I have one of them here,
I have
Under the
one here too.
Influence. There you go,
Yeah,
Commanding the Power of Thought. Thank
right.
you. How can
So,
people access all of your amazing resources?
well, the best place is just go to my website, thoughtgenius.com. And then you can find what it is you're looking for. You can schedule an appointment. You can, if you want to have more conversation, if you want me to work with some of your people or work with you individually, that's the best way to get a hold of me, thoughtgenius.com.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Fannin, from all my heart for opening our eyes to uh, our own power and how important it is to manage our own energy, as you said, so we can be even healthier first and foremost, and of course, attract that which we truly desire in our life. And I'm so thankful for the work that you do, for bringing the research to this work, so that, again, people can be even more open and curious to learn more.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure. I love having these conversations with you. So thank you for having me on and being able to reach some of your constituents and your colleagues out there. And I love doing this work. It doesn't feel like work to me. It just is who I am. I thank you very much.
Well, I thank you too. Hey, game changers. I am so grateful that you tuned into this episode. We're also very grateful to Dr. Fannin for being with us on this episode. I just learned so much and I love to geek out on this stuff. If you're also curious to learn even more about the science of change, if you have not yet heard the episode with Dr. Richard Boyatzis on the science of change, it's episode 205. I think you'll enjoy that as well. So all my love, thank you so much for being a member of our community. If you have not yet subscribed, feel free to do so. Share this with anybody that you believe it will help, and keep learning and growing. Bye for now.